All right, Show Me a Sign by Anne-Claire Lizotte. We're on chapter 17. Behind the barn, Thomas is sweeping out the sheep shelters and putting in fresh wheat straw. The flock can abide snow, but need blocking from the winter winds. I'm still brooding over the missing map and not ready to go inside. I walk over to him. I saw Sally last week, I tell him. She said so, he signs. She told me a story, I sign, about a man who came to the island uninvited, conducted a survey, and then took things that didn't belong to him. He stops working and focuses his attention on me. Stories can be interpreted in many different ways, he signs. I've heard some arguments about land disputes, I sign, that our fathers took land that didn't belong to us. He stops and he rubs his chin thoughtfully. As far as I'm concerned, he tells me, there have never been any real disputes. What do you mean? Missionaries and English settlers have made land claims up and down from Noeep, I guess is how that's said. Thomas signs confidently. It remains a Wampanoag island. In truth, no one can truly buy or sell this land. It belongs to a far greater being. You mean your god, Moshep, I ask? I shouldn't call him a god, but rather our greatest ancestor, Thomas signs. He is not the church or the commonwealth. He, not the church or the commonwealth, is the only one who gave us a deed to the island. He taught us to be partners with it in respectful stewardship. I follow Christian beliefs, I tell him. All beliefs are important to the believers, he signs. Do you think my family should leave? I ask Thomas. That will not happen, he signs. We're willing to share, but that doesn't mean that you can lay claim to the land that was granted to us, or that an honest woman can be falsely accused. I told the truth about the sheets, I sign. I'm truly sorry for the part I played in Helen's persecution. It was good for you to speak the truth, he tells me, just as it was honorable for your father to testify that when I scuffled with an Englishman, it was in self-defense. Why does it matter that we're English or Irish or Wampanoag? I ask him. We're all Americans now. I think you know it's not that simple, Thomas signs. Do I? It's hard to reckon it out in my mind. Sam paws at my leg. Thomas points towards my house. Mr. Pye's carriage is outside. I leave Thomas to his work. Sam follows me to the house. Before going inside, I command him to sit, and I give him a good scratch on the rump. His undercoat has grown in for the winter, and he's so big and bushy. I know he wants to sleep by the fire, but he must sleep in the barn to keep the predators at bay. When I enter the kitchen, I see that Andrew and Miss Hammond are here too. The hearth is not just well cleaned and the table well laid with silver, but festive red candles are aglow. Fresh pine boughs crackle in the fire. Mama instructs me to pour ale for Papa, Andrew, and Mr. Pye in pewter mugs from the cupboard. Will wonders never cease? There's much fussing over this beautiful preparation as we take our seats. Mama has a right to look proud. Although it's not my place to ask questions at supper with grown folks, I see this as my chance. Mama, I sign, would you interpret for me? I have a question to ask Andrew. She looks to Papa, who nods. Andrew is looking at us. No one is interpreting. Mama nods as well. I've been watching you conduct your experiments, I tell him. He guzzles his ale and then wryly replies with a piercing look. I've noticed. Nancy and I were not quite as covert as we had hoped. Do you think a local element is causing our deafness? I ask him. Andrew looks surprised. Miss Hammond beams with delight. I am one of her best students, though my talent lies more in words than scientific problems. That's my theory, he responds, looking mostly at Mama. He also glances at me with interest. This is the first time that we're conversing, albeit with Mama's help. I think the well water may have a rare impurity that causes your infirmity. I cannot tell if Andrew's speech is cordial. Would Mama interpret the results the way Reverend Lee did? Perhaps Andrew is careful to not let her see that side of him. We all drink the same water, Mr. Pye signs as fluently as he speaks. He's echoing what I said to Nancy. That's true, Andrew says. There may be an explanation for that. Well, have you seen any similar cases? Mr. Pye asks. My hypothesis, Andrew says rather loftily, is based on Caldwater Colden's book on the epidemic of yellow fever. In 1743, he published essays explaining how filthy living conditions were related to high incidence of disease in New York City. Mr. Pye says, I don't see how that's relevant to deafness and Chilmark. It's not a disease like yellow fever. Well, that's a matter of opinion, Andrew says. I do not like this guy. Miss Hammond signs and speaks. Honestly, in all my years, I have not heard of any person in this town suffering or dying from the inability to hear. I agree, Mr. Pye adds quickly. In some ways, I've always considered my deaf neighbors luckier for the less than melodious sounds that they escape. Roosters, screaming infants, and the like. Papa laughs broadly. I stifle a giggle. It's common deaf humor on the island to name all the ways that the hearing are disadvantaged. That's very amusing, sir, Andrew says, ignoring Papa and me. But wouldn't it be better if these people didn't have to live their lives in a reduced state? Papa, Mr. Pye, Miss Hammond, and I stare at Andrew. Mama seems embarrassed to have interpreted it for us, but says nothing. I look at Papa. He's watching intently. Why does he keep quiet? Are his thoughts not appropriate for a polite supper? I've wondered if Papa feels powerless having his wife speak for him on important matters. There's usually a lovely balance between them. George and I could never turn them against each other in our disputes. But this intruder has tipped the scale in a way that I would never have imagined. Sometimes I feel in chats with hearing people that it can be difficult to put in my own thoughts. They interpret whatever possible, but when they converse in a group, they look and talk only to one another. It's not mean-spirited, but careless. They forget to slow down and include me. Is this what Papa's feeling? Young man, I'm aghast that you would make such an insulting remark under our host's roof. Mr. Pye signs and speaks. I want to stand up and applaud. Oh, I meant no offense, Andrew says, Mama still signing for him. We are in the Enlightenment. The purpose of science is not only to better understand the world around us, but also to improve the lot of the suffering. Ever a peacemaker, Papa raises his mug to a toast. Health, good long. Everyone follows his example, but the gathering feels strained. What is the desired outcome of your experiments? Mr. Pye asks sharply. Pardon me, sir, Andrew replies, but I don't understand the question. Mr. Pye signs and speaks. If we clean our water supply and other foul living conditions, assuming there are any in Chilmark, do you mean for the deaf to just disappear? Is it your opinion that deafness is a scourge to eliminate like yellow fever? I think the healthier and more whole we are, the better, Andrew says. We must strive for perfection, not just in nature, but among men. Anything less is a poor substitute. Mama hesitates while interpreting Andrew's last remark. Please eat, she replies as she quickly changes from interpreter to hostess, takes her fork to eat something after smiling at her guests. There's a long silence. Mama looks to Papa. He signs. My wife prepared a delicious repast. My daughter is impressionable. I don't care for these discussions at my family's table. I don't know what will come of your study on our island, but the Lamberts will no longer take part in it. Mr. Pye and Miss Hammond are beaming, but I can't read Mama's expression. At least you all live like Christians, Andrew says, trying to integrate himself again. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? Miss Hammond signs and speaks. Why, madam, because you're surrounded by the savage races, Andrew responds. They're mostly Christianized, Mr. Pye tells him. Yes, Andrew acknowledged. The church has done what it can. I think the church has done quite enough, Miss Hammond signs and speaks. What I would like to know, Mama signs and speaks, is what is to be done with the children of the Wampanoag women and freed men. The Wampanoag complain that we stole their land, even though we paid them for it honestly. Now that the women are giving birth to mongrels, will they still lay claim to the Wampanoag land? I don't see how they can. How can Mama be so cruel? Mongrel is a good way to describe pups, but not children. Sally is a girl just like me. Is it Andrew who brings out the worst in Mama? I think about what Thomas explained to me, that the Wampanoag do not place the same importance on bloodlines as we do, and that the land belongs to Moshop, who shares it with his people. I looked to Papa to add more reason to the discussion. He appears calm, but I sense his strength is rising under the surface. Still, I know he will not contradict Mama in front of the guests. Andrew says, "That is a problem, madam. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has often acted too permissive, a father to the Wampanoag children. I hope they will make sure that no group abuses their special privileges." Mama offers second helpings, and we finish the meal in silence. When everyone is done eating, Mr. Pye and Miss Hammond stand up to leave, making excuses about having to check in on a sick relative. My dear schoolteacher gives me a hug and signs, "I pray for the well-being of your family." Andrew also excuses himself while putting on his coat. He thanks Mama for her hospitality, kisses her hand, and begins his walk to the parsonage. For the first time, I wonder, does being deaf determine my worth? Will deafness ever disappear from the world? Are there really perfect men? I think I know that answer. Nope. All right. More to come.